Hello everyone, this is Jumpie and you're listening to Jumpie Talk. This is, I guess, kind of a podcast. So, what is this episode about? Well, as you can probably read in the title right now, this episode is about Epithet Erased. And I don't know if you've heard about this show, but it's on YouTube and I highly recommend you checking it out, which is exactly why I'm gonna be talking about it. So if you haven't seen Epithet Erased yet, go watch it. There's probably gonna be a link to the whole first season in the description. You can watch it for free on YouTube, but I would also recommend supporting it on Verve. The good thing about supporting it on Verve is that they might make a couple more seasons, and this show is really great and I want more seasons of it, especially because I know roughly what's gonna happen in the next season and I'm so excited for it. Let's say there's 3 sections to this video. First, there's the completely spoiler-free section. Then there's the section for spoilers for the first season of this show, so the part that you can actually see on YouTube and Verve. And then there's the third part, in which I'm gonna talk about what Epithet Erased is based on. And there's gonna be a lot of spoilers of stuff that's not even in the first season, so I do not recommend you listening to that if you just wanna watch the show and be surprised by all the cool stuff that's gonna happen. But if you have already seen what Epithet Erased is based on, or if you don't care about spoilers, then sure, check it out. And I would appreciate it, but please keep that in mind. There's gonna be spoilers for stuff that you're not supposed to know yet. But let's start at the beginning. By the way, quick disclaimer, this is not an informative video. I haven't done any research. That's not the point of this podcast. I'm gonna share with you everything that I know and care about and wanna talk about, but this is not the kind of podcast where I like research a topic and then talk about it. This is just me talking about stuff that I wanna talk about based on the things that I know and care about and wanna talk about. Just so you know, there are people who have talked about this show in a more informative manner, even with interviews with the creator and a lot of background information, but this podcast is not that. This is just me talking about stuff that I wanna talk about. So, Epithet Erased was created by Brendan Blaber, also known as Jello Apocalypse. The link to his YouTube channel is also gonna be in the description and probably his Twitter too. And this show started out as a TTRPG called Anime Campaign that was streamed on Surprise Round RPG, which is a Twitch channel by Warped Lamp. And basically on this Twitch channel they just get together with a bunch of friends and they play TTRPGs. Anime Campaign ran for, I think it was 7 sessions, which each are like several hours long. Like I think all of them are somewhere between 5 and 8 hours. And there's also like entire streams that are just like getting in character, so like there's no actual action happening, it's just like the players finding their role with new characters. So I think the entirety of that campaign was about 80 plus hours, and I watched all of those 80 plus hours. I watched the entire thing back when it was still available. It isn't available as of now, exactly because there's so many spoilers for Epithet Erased and like future events in Epithet Erased, which is why, again, I highly recommend that if you do not wanna get spoiled, don't listen to that last section where I'm gonna talk about Anime Campaign as in what happens in it. Like, it's not gonna be like a recap of everything that happens, but like stuff that I wanna mention, and there may be spoilers. I'm not gonna talk about all of it, even though there's a lot of stuff that I would like to talk about, but I'm just gonna talk about the important stuff. So it's not gonna be a lot, but there are gonna be spoilers. There isn't a single character that I don't like. And the antagonist of that show, not gonna spoil anything, but that antagonist is honestly my favorite antagonist in all of fiction. And it's really hard to explain why without going into detail. I remember like watching that last session and being like so pumped up, and more on that in the spoilery section, like the super spoilery third section. But for now, let's just say Anime Campaign was great. I loved it and a lot of people loved it. And then Verve offered Jello Apocalypse to make a show on it. And if you want more details on all that behind the scenes stuff, there's videos on that on YouTube that go into more detail. I would recommend it. It's really interesting to like hear behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, absolutely definitely check that out if you want to. It might also give you more of an appreciation for everything that happened behind the scenes, because the production of this show was not easy, that much I can tell you. But let's talk about Epithet Erased itself. Epithet Erased has one season with 7 episodes. Each of them is around 20 to 30 minutes, like a normal episode length. Within these 7 episodes, there's 2 arcs. The first one, let's just call it the Museum arc, which is episode 1 to 4. And then there's the Western arc, which is episode 5 to 7. The Western arc is based on the first session of Anime Campaign. And by the way, I probably should have mentioned this before. There's a session that is, I think, referred to as Session 0, which is one Anime Campaign session that was not recorded, which took place at some, I think it was baseball field, a baseball stadium or something like that. But it doesn't really matter because it's not in the first season. Instead, we start the show with the Museum arc, which is entirely new, but as far as I can tell, reuses some of those broad elements of Session 0. When watching this show, you quickly realize that it uses a very unique style, as in it's not animated as any regular cartoon would be. It's more like it's easier to show than describe. You will also notice that these characters narrate their own actions. All of this is reminiscent of what Epithet Erased is based on, which is a TTRPG. So it kind of feels like watching a TTRPG translated into a show. So they don't take away that origin of it, which I really love. And honestly, I think this fits really well because it is a show that focuses on dialogue. And it does have action, but most importantly, it is about these characters talking with each other. I've heard a lot of complaints about the animation style and the stylistic choices, which have been called cheap. I think that's unfair, like especially considering that not only animation is so expensive, and like even with what we got, this was super expensive. This was not cheap, and considering their limitations, I absolutely love what they did with those limitations. Because especially if you, like me, have watched Anime Campaign, it is really great to see this show actually being rooted in that TTRPG feeling. You especially see it when it switches to like an overview that feels like a Roll20 map, which is, you know, they played Anime Campaign on Roll20 maps. So that immediately just made me feel at home in a way, like not really at home, but like at home with this show. It felt like I was returning to Anime Campaign, but in a much more streamlined and focused and developed way. It's like watching the storyboards of a movie and then getting to see the finished movie. It's really great. And that's not to say that if you've watched Anime Campaign, then Epithet Erased, you're gonna know everything that happens. That's not the case. Epithet Erased is based on Anime Campaign and follows the same general storyline, but it takes a lot of liberties and changes a lot of stuff, which it makes it feel like Epithet Erased, but also it feels like something new, and that's great. And also the characters all got a redesign. One of my favorite redesigns is Molly, who is the main character for the Museum arc. And I've heard a lot of people be sad that she's not in the Western arc, but that sadness quickly went away when they actually got into the Western arc. Like, I've watched a lot of reaction channels react to Epithet Erased, and they all were like, oh, Molly isn't gonna be in this, but then like at the end of the episode there's gonna be other cool characters, and they're like, yeah, I miss Molly, but like these characters are also really great. And like we get one character that was there before, and well, I guess now we would go into spoiler territory. Well, first of all, you know what? I can give you one non-spoilery thing, which is, what is Epithet Erased even about? Well, should have mentioned that earlier, I bet. Epithet Erased takes place in a world that is similar to ours, but a little bit more magical. In this world, a fraction of people are inscribed. They have epithets. An epithet is a word that is attached to an inscribed soul. So basically, you have a word, a very specific word. Everyone has their own unique word, and that word basically gives you magical powers that are either directly or tangentially related to that word. In Anime Campaign, that word was, during character creation, randomly generated, which is something that I really love. Like the idea of you make a character and you randomly generate 3 words and you choose one of these words to be that person's epithet or that person's core word, which is the epithet equivalent of Mundies. Mundies are people without epithets. They are normal people, but they also have their own merit. So in terms of playing a Mundi, you're not just gonna be screwed because every epithet user is gonna be more powerful than you. In fact, there can be some really great and powerful Mundis, because in Anime Campaign, and this distinction hasn't been made in Epithet Erased yet, so I'm specifying that this is the case in Anime Campaign. This distinction may not exist in Epithet Erased, but there's 2 types of Mundis. There's the Powerhouse Mundis and the Expert Mundis. Powerhouse Mundis, they can go for a long time. They have a lot of stamina, which means they have a lot of energy. They don't get knocked down so easily. They can take a lot of damage and attacks, or they can exhaust themselves for a long time before they actually get exhausted. Expert Mundis are very proficient, which means they are really good at one thing, and this is what their core word describes. A core word of a Mundi in Anime Campaign, again, in Epithet Erased, the existence of core words hasn't been confirmed yet, or it just doesn't exist, but in Anime Campaign, the core word is basically the epithet for Mundis, which is just a word that relates to your very special talent. If you had, for example, the core word flower, then you would maybe be really good at gardening. Or maybe you had the core word street, and then you're like a race car driver who's like really, really good. And Mundis can absolutely become really, really powerful, but they don't have superpowers, which is their distinction from Inscribed. So this is the world that Anime Campaign and Epithet Erased live in. This is a world of Inscribed and Mundis. I love the idea of having it tied to randomly generated words, and this is something you can have a lot of fun with that I absolutely love about that system, which, by the way, the Anime Campaign system is available publicly. There's a Google Drive folder, which is just the entire system. I kind of wish that Jello Apocalypse would have added a section about creating enemies, which, like, he goes into detail in creating encounters, but not really creating enemies, as in how powerful should I as a GM make the enemies, or how exactly do I balance that? Because I'm sure there's more to it than just running skirmishes until it works. I'm pretty sure there's more that can be added to that. Maybe he just didn't think about it, or there's some other reason, but I really would have liked it if that was in there. Because if I were to run an Anime campaign, then I certainly would run into trouble there and wouldn't have a reference to come back to with this system guide. Otherwise, that system is well written. There's not much more to say about it for me, really. I do use the system for a project that I'm not gonna talk about just yet. I might be mentioning it at the end. But for right now, let's not talk about anything that I do. Let's just talk about Epithet Erased. Now comes the part where I go into spoilers for Epithet Erased. So if you haven't watched the show yet, I highly recommend that you do now. Or, later, but like don't continue to watch this video before you've actually seen Epithet Erased. With that being said, I'm not gonna go into the entire plot because I don't really care to recap everything that has happened in it. From this point out, I'm just gonna assume that you've already seen the entire first season, and I'm just gonna talk about the things that I like as if you had already seen it. My favorite of the redesigns is Molly. I think she looks really adorable with like that puffy hair, and like I love the colors on her, like all the browns and greens, and her bear hoodie, like that's something that she's had before, and like the eyes that look like buttons, also something that her previous design had. She's so adorable, and like you always feel so sorry for her when she like says something, like her entire life is so sad and everything, and you feel so sorry for her all the time, and you want to protect her, but honestly she's not the kind of character who needs protecting in a way. The way I see it, she's pretty capable of taking care of everything herself. She is, after all, basically managing her entire family's life. So she's not like some helpless little girl. Unless, of course, she's being put into a situation like a museum robbery, which, of course, is a lot to ask from a 12-year-old girl. But like in general, she is very mature, but she is very mature in a bad way, as in like she had to grow up too early and she didn't really have the time to have a childhood. So she's just this very desensitized person who just had to learn to be responsible way too quickly. And you feel so sorry for her, but also kind of laugh at how she's like, she has so much responsibility, and it's kind of cute to see her like talk about taxes and stuff, but then also say that she really likes bears. I love that line, like, I like bears. And then also, one of my favorite characters in both Epithet Erased and Anime Campaign is Giovanni Potage. Such a high energy and really funny character, which is also the kind of character that I would love to voice, like not in this show, but like in fan stuff. This is the kind of character that I love to voice and that I feel that I can voice really well, like these high energy, a little bit insane, really ridiculous character. This is the kind of character with the kind of voice that I really love voicing. Considering how much I loved Rube as Giovanni in Anime Campaign, I was really curious what kind of voice Giovanni would get in Epithet Erased, because obviously Giovanni couldn't be voiced by Rube in this show. So I was really curious what Giovanni was gonna sound like in Epithet Erased. And honestly, I don't think they could have gotten anyone better than the guy who voices Giovanni in Epithet Erased. I think that was the perfect choice. This is like the energy and like the general feel of the voice. It's perfect. I can absolutely not imagine any other voice that would have fit as well. So this is great casting. Speaking of, Molly's voice actress, who I think is Danny Chambers, I'm not sure if that's her name. I was at first, and I want to emphasize at first, I wasn't so sold on the performance at first when I heard it in the trailer, because in Anime Campaign, Molly was such a low energy character. She was just like, I guess this might as well be happening. What am I gonna do against it? Like really quiet, really shy, really timid, really... Did I say quiet yet? Which all fits her power of like making things quiet or weak. She definitely feels very quiet and weak in her voice and her whole being. So at first I wasn't really sold on this take of Molly where she's more high energy, which especially the trailer showed more of her high energy moments. So quite frankly, I didn't really like it. I didn't hate it. It just felt not completely right. If this show hadn't been done by Jello Apocalypse, who also made Anime Campaign and who also voiced Molly himself in the TTRPG because she was an NPC, not a player character. So considering all that, I was sure that he absolutely knew what he wanted this character to be. And if this was the decision that was made in the end for Molly, then that is absolutely what he wanted. And I trust that he knows what he's doing. But then watching the actual show, it does really work. And compared to everyone else, she's still very low energy, but the entire show just has this high energy feeling most of the time. So it works. I guess having a very low energy main character wouldn't work quite so well, so I can understand the thought process that might have happened here. And with all that being said, I absolutely love how Molly is being voiced. Like, I love that voice. It's really cute. I love the delivery. It is adorable and it's great. The voice acting in general is really, really great. Then there's Indus and Mara, of course. Fun fact. When I first watched the first episode of Epithet Erased, I did not see the plot twist that Mara and Indus were robbing the museum. I did not see that coming, even though most, if not all, other people have actually seen it coming because it was being foreshadowed. But I was so distracted by the fact that we already knew that Giovanni was robbing the place. So it felt less like foreshadowing for Indus and Mara robbing the place and more like foreshadowing for Giovanni robbing the place. And until the final line, I didn't really realize that. What makes it even worse and makes it weirder that I didn't see it coming was that I had seen Anime Campaign, and without counting session 0 that wasn't recorded, the first time you see Mara in Anime Campaign is in prison. That was where I first saw her, and Indus was visiting her, and I think he brought her cookies, which are probably barrier shaped and on a barrier plate. plate. That was how I first saw them, but for some reason I didn't see them robbing this museum. I don't know how I missed that. Everyone else who didn't even know these characters saw it coming, so. Honestly, I love Innocent Mara, and one thing that I noticed when I was like studying the color palettes of all the characters for my own thing that, again, I'm gonna talk about way at the end. But when I was studying the color palettes of all the characters, I realized Mara is one of the very few characters with a cold color palette. Like, all the characters have really warm and really bright colors, but Mara is one of the, I think, 2 characters that we've seen so far that have a cold color palette, and those are Mara and Howie. Pretty much every other character has these very warm and bright colors, so Mara really sticks apart. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. Like, yeah, she may be pale because she's so weak and fragile in a sense. Like, not weak in every sense, but like obviously weak in a physical like sense. Like, she's fragile, obviously. Also, like, the colder colors fit her personality of like she suffered so much that like the warmth of her is just gone. Also, the fact that she is a bad person is like, in terms of storytelling, also like fitting that she would have cold colors. Not so much Howie. He's not a mean person. Like, he can be cold, but you see in the way he treats his worker bees, he has a lot of passion for his work. So he's not just a cold, hard worker. He actually has a certain warmth to him under that rough exterior. And sure, there's also coldness and strength underneath that surface. Like, he has a hard shell and a hard core, but also somewhere in between those, there's a layer of sweet honey in a way. And I also want to mention Sylvie, who is actually voiced by, I don't know his real name, but his internet persona is called Margin. He actually did play Sylvie in an anime campaign, and it's honestly really nice to like hear people who you've heard as these characters, but then again in a more refined way, because this isn't improvised anymore. They can have a more focused delivery, and they can have multiple takes and take the best one of that. This is how voice acting works. I think everyone knows that, but like, it's not improvised, so it can be a lot more focused and streamlined and expressive and purposeful, and this is great. Hearing those same people, and I'm pretty sure as much as possible they wanted to reuse the same people, but in terms of all the characters that have appeared so far, that was really only possible for Sylvie and Ramsey. Ramsey is one of my favorites too, but unfortunately with all the characters we've gotten so far, that was only possible with these 2 getting the player as the voice actor, because often the problem was that they were either voiced by a non-voice actor or a person of another gender, or somebody who doesn't have the fitting voice. For example, in this was voiced by Jello Apocalypse because he was also an NPC, but Jello has a mid-high voice, and that wouldn't really fit for the big strong guy. Like, yeah, the voice that he did in Anime Campaign was pretty similar, but that being said, it is more of an impression. I love the Banzai Blasters, like all of them, but I do think my favorite is Car Crash. And we do see him later again off the job, and he's so cute, like in a way he's adorable. And also like the way Giovanni sees his boys. It's great. And how they're also supportive, except towards Ben, because fuck Ben apparently. I feel it's unfair in a way, like they're also supportive but also fuck Ben, but I don't know. I did like Ben. One of my favorite lines from the trailer was, "Nobody's a better poser than us. Flamethrower does male cheerleading on weekends. Come on guys, don't tell him that. There's no reason to be ashamed of it, dude. Yeah man, you're really good at it." I love this. It's so sweet. Jello Apocalypse is really good at like this casual wholesomeness, just like people being supportive of each other, and I absolutely love that. And I love every time when I see that in his writing. It's so great, like so cute. I also really like that Crusher is called Crusher because of his crush on Giovanni. Crusher hasn't really had much of a role. He's more of an extra, even more than like some of the other Banzai Blasters. But I do like that detail. Like, it has nothing to do with the story. It's just like a fun fact. But I love the idea of like, does Giovanni know that that's why he's called Crusher? So does Giovanni know? Like, of course, like there's this one scene in episode 4 where it's like, "Great job, boss, I love you. But does Giovanni realize, like, he's stupid in a way, so I could totally believe if he doesn't even realize that Crusher has a crush on him, and that they call him Crusher because he has a crush on him. There are definitely a lot of jokes that reference the TTRPG, like jokes that were just improvised, and I'm pretty sure there's more than I can recognize as such, but yeah, I love that. And I can absolutely understand how hard it must be to fit like 80 hours of really good content, or like trimming all the fat. Basically, it's like at least 40 hours of really solid character moments and jokes and that kind of stuff. And it must be really hard to like take that, and even just the portion that is relevant to the present characters. Even then, like taking those like maybe 5 to 10 hours of really good content, like squeezing that into like a format that is so relatively short compared to the TTRPG. It must be really hard. And also integrating those moments well so they actually flow. Like it does sometimes feel like things just exist as like a callback, but it's never overdone, so I can completely let it go if like one of the jokes is not implemented so well in the narrative. Like it feels a little bit forced. Like the well joke and all's well that ends well, what the episode was even named after. Like, yeah, the well has nothing to do with the story. It doesn't really further anything, especially since everything that we learn from this scene has in a way already been established. The way that this town is so run down, that rhymed. The fact that it's like a backwater town, and we already know all of that. But come on, like the well scene, that is one of the most iconic anime campaign jokes. So of course he has to put that in. I completely understand. And I'm so glad that it is in there. So really, I can't be mad at Jello for like trying to squeeze every bit of greatness that was an anime campaign into Epithet Erased. I don't have much to say on Percy, except in anime campaign, Percy wasn't one of my favorite characters. I liked her. Again, there wasn't a single character that I didn't like. I liked her. And Aram, who played her in anime campaign, he's absolutely hilarious. But I wasn't so interested in Percy compared to all the other characters. Like, she's a great character. She was even in anime campaign. I'm not saying that she wasn't, but I mean, compared to all of the other characters, I wasn't that interested in her. Same with Zora, actually. And in both cases, like, I really liked both Percy and Zora's powers, but as characters, I didn't find them that interesting, which did, for both of them, change in Epithet Erased, where I now love both of them. Like, Percy being this absolute lawful good, and like, everyone knows the coolest thing to be is an upright citizen. Like, this person genuinely believes in absolute moral goodness. And what I also love, a great character line in Epithet Erased of hers is like, where she says, just a reminder of how many have been failed by our system. Like, she's not blaming the criminals for crime. She is aware that it is a broken system. Nobody except Giovanni does crime because they want to. Like, people just have to do it sometimes. They're being forced in a situation. And that's not their fault most of the time. Like, rarely it is their fault, but most of the time it's just that they're being put into situations outside of their control where they just have no other choice or feel like they don't have another choice. And Percy is aware of that, and that's really great, and I love that that line is in there. She doesn't see criminals as lesser people, she sees them as people that the system that she works for has failed, and I think that's great. But then also just like all these lines where she's like a mom trying to be cool, and in a way it is cool, like from an outside perspective of like watching this show. I definitely like Percy a lot more now than I did in anime campaign, and again, same with Zora. Although Zora, honestly, what I love most about her is like, how do I phrase that? Zora's voice is really attractive, and it's like partially just like the fun in her delivery. She enjoys every single line that she's saying, and that is great. I love how much fun she has with every single line and how much energy she puts into every single line. But also, honestly, Zora in this version more than anime campaign is really hard. Also, she's really tall. We don't get that many tall women in media, so it sticks out more to me. Well, let's see how much of that I'm gonna keep. In general, I love all of the character designs, by the way, like they are great. And I'm following like the artist who designed these characters on Twitter, and like she has so many cool character designs. It's great. Please follow her on Twitter. Rhea Bertram at Rhea Simone 1. That's her. I'm scrolling through them right now. All of these designs are so good. Please follow her. I love Ramsey. He's one of my favorite characters from Anime Campaign, and he's so great in this too. Also voiced by the same guy who played him in Anime Campaign, William T. Saab. I really like this guy. That being said, Ramsey, also one of my favorite characters. I'm so happy that he got his doinka in the Epithet Erased design. The doinka that's like this little strain of hair. That's his doinka. And I love that because the initial Anime Campaign design didn't have that. And then like he got a very slight redesign in one of the later sessions where he like returned and he got his doinka, and one of the first things he said was like, yeah, I got this doinka now and I really like it, and that's so cute. And I love that he has his doinka in Epithet Erased. I love it. There isn't much that I can say about the ending without going to spoilers. But I just want to mention, first of all, it's a great feeling to have like this one scene with all the bad guys where like Zora is returning to Bliss Ocean headquarters. And like you see these like individuals. And if you've seen Anime Campaign, you know who they are. I'm so excited to see them in Epithet Erased because I love these people. They are great characters. Especially the one that we've seen a little bit more about. I don't know if her name was officially said yet within Epithet Erased. So I'm not gonna say her name for now, but like, you know who I mean. The quote unquote electric gremlin. Out of that group, she's one of my favorites. Oh, but nothing beats the mysterious person at the end who's like, so how did it go? I love that person. I am so excited to see more of Epithet Erased. But that being said, whether or not we do get more of it depends on how successful Epithet Erased is. So I really recommend supporting the show directly over Verve. So yeah, please absolutely do that. I want more of this show. Oh, also, I love how in the second ending song, all those wanted posters and all of that, those artworks there are basically more detailed versions of the icons that were used in Anime Campaign. And one last thing about the ending. Condoriano, one of the seemingly random words flashing up where like two of them are nothing of great interest because like Bliss Ocean, we know about Bliss Ocean, Great at Crime, that's the ending song, nothing special. But Condoriano, that made me so happy. And on my first view, I didn't even see that. It took me like watching somebody else's reaction where they actually weren't as lazy as me and like actually went back and like, okay, so what was there? Bliss Ocean, okay. Great at Crime, yeah, okay. Condoriano, what is that? And I'm like, ooh, I know what that is. Condoriano. I'm so excited. And it's put here. Condoriano. It exists in Epithet Erased. And I'm so excited for it. That's all I'm gonna say. It's better if you don't know about this. Trust me, it's better. That's the whole fun of it. It's great. If you want to know all of those like open endings that the first season gives us, please support this show. Okay, now we're moving into the super spoiler section of Anime Campaign. There isn't much that I really want to mention. I'm just gonna go like really brief. This is just like stray thoughts. Charlie Foxtrot. I love her. She's so cute and she is so adorable. I'm a little bit sad that it didn't work out with her and Ramsey. I love Alcatraz a lot. He's adorable. I love him. He's cool and cute. He's adorable. I love the magical girl thing. I love that it doesn't have to be a girl. That, for example, Indus is one of the magical girls. I love how it's like, yeah, we're not restricting it to girls. Like anybody can be a magical girl if they want to. I like that. I like that a lot. Then let's just talk about the best antagonist in all of fiction, in my opinion. Super huge spoiler. The main antagonist is Naven Knock Knock, which is probably like, knock knock, who's there? Motorcycle. Motorcycle who? It's me, Naven, on a motorcycle, and I'm driving away. See you later, fucker. Like, first of all, outside of being the antagonist, Naven is such a pleasant person. So, Naven Knock Knock first appeared as like just a person who seemed very nice. He's a communicator who's always smiling and he always has his eyes closed, which is like something that Jello himself really likes. The kind of characters who like always have their eyes closed and like they have this really nice positive energy about them, and he's always smiling. Like Jello himself said that whenever he's voicing Nathan, he's always smiling, and I'm even doing it myself right now, as you can probably hear by my voice. I'm always smiling and so happy, and oh, he's such a nice person, and he helps people communicating more clearly and more openly and more honestly, and he's such a nice person, and he honestly is a nice person, even though he's the antagonist, as you much later find out. He is still a very nice person and a very pleasant person. He's not like the twist Disney villain who's like a nice person at first, but once they're revealed, they're like a jackass. He's genuinely nice, and that never changes. And not like he has a nice exterior, but like he's genuinely so nice. Like seriously, he's a good guy. Genuinely. So first of all, you see him as like this nice person who's like a communicator, and he's helping people talking more openly. And then later, when you have this one scene that the ending of Epithet Erased sorta mimicked in a way, but in a more condensed and shorter way, and in a less revealing way, like you don't find out who this is. But in this scene, like what I loved about this is like Jello didn't use his normal voice for like him talking over the like TV. He used a different, a deeper voice. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like I love that you didn't recognize it immediately. But based alone on the mannerisms towards the end of that scene, I had the realization of like, oh my, this is Nathan. And like you could hear like the other players figuring out, like they didn't say anything, but like, oh, like you could hear how they figured it out also through the mannerisms. And this is so cool. Like you don't even have to notice at that point, but like you can, not based on any hints other than the voice itself, even though the voice is changed, but like the mannerisms of like the smiley way of talking. And I love that. And that's great. And then, yeah, he's like the main antagonist of Anime Campaign. Okay, so his ability is to like see and also erase or change memories of people. And because of his ability, he was able to guess people's epithet very easily. And in the world of at least Anime Campaign, I'm not sure if it works exactly that way in Epithet Erased, but in Anime Campaign, when you guess a person's epithet, you gain proficiency, which makes you even better at your own ability. Which is why Sylvie says in Epithet Erased, I'm not gonna tell you my epithet, that's strategic suicide. This is, by the way, why Indus always tells everyone that his epithet is barrier, because his reasoning is that it is honorable to let his opponents know his epithet. Like, if they know your epithet, then it's a fairer fight. That's how he sees it. That's why he always tells everyone that his epithet is barrier. And on the other side, Sylvie's not gonna tell anyone his epithet, because that is strategically not so smart. And that being said, Nathan, with his ability to read memories, of course knows people's epithet, so he always gets stronger, and that's like perpetual, because the stronger his epithet gets, the more he can see the memories of the people around him. And it is at this point where he's so strong that he can just see everyone's memories at all time. And his plan is to use that ability to make everyone forget their epithet by amplifying his ability even more, so that everyone in the world who has an epithet can forget their epithet, because epithets are really dangerous. As he is a prime example. Like, a powerful epithet in the wrong hand can do awful things, and he realized that a powerful epithet in the right hand can also do a lot of good, but that is too much of a gamble, and there's always gonna be dangerous people. He doesn't want powerful inscribed to abuse their epithets, so he wants everyone to be a Mundi, even though they're technically not Mundis, but by forgetting your own epithet, you can't use it. So technically, in a way, you become a Mundi. It's like epithets had never existed, and that makes everyone more equal in a way. Like, this is exactly what Zora says in Epithet Erased. You can train all your life just to be beat by some person with a superpower. And also what Howie says, if they can use their epithet to create a building in 2 hours, that just means we're gonna have to do it in 1. I really love that conflict. Nathan doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to take everyone's epithet. He doesn't want them to not be special anymore. But it has to happen. Like, he sees that there might be another solution, but the only other solution really is if it can be guaranteed that there's always gonna be good people who can stand up against people like him, very powerful people like him, who are gonna do bad things, because he is is doing a bad thing, and he is aware of that, and he wants to be stopped, because being stopped means that there's gonna be people who can stop people like him who would not just stop. Like, he cannot stop, because a genuinely bad person as powerful as him will not stop. And so he cannot either. And so he either has to succeed and erase everyone's epithet, or he just has to be defeated. And with that, it is being proven that there's gonna be people who can defeat people like him, but those that are not just gonna give up. And that is so great, because Naven doesn't want this fight, the protagonists don't want this fight, and you as the viewer also don't want this fight, because you care about everyone in the entire conflict. Like the heroes and him, you care about all of them. You care about all these people, and you don't want any of them to lose. And neither of them wants to fight the other. Like the protagonists, they understand what Naven wants, and they don't want to fight him either, but they have to. And Naven doesn't want to fight them, but he has to. Nobody wants this conflict, but this conflict has to happen. And that is what I love so much about it. And this is why Naven is my favorite antagonist of all fiction. I've never seen a conflict in a story where literally nobody within or outside of the story wants this fight, and still it has to happen. I guess that's everything I have to say on that. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I was a little bit worried if I even would have enough to talk about, but the recording is at almost 3 hours now. I hope you enjoyed this. And one last thing that has to do with Epithet Erased, which I said I was gonna come back to later, which is I have my own little project, and I'm only gonna briefly go over it, but I'm making a fan comic of Epithet Erased, which is called Monday No Epithet, which I especially love because you could either read it as an English title, which means a Monday has no epithet, but also you could read it as an anime title, which means the Monday's epithet. Without giving too much away, it is about two Mondays called Happy-Go-Lucky and Eugene Euclid. Eugene feels like epithet users have an unfair advantage in everything, which is a similar conflict to the one in Epithet Erased and Anime Campaign, but he takes a different approach. Instead of wanting to take people's epithets through, for example, the Arson Amulet, he wants to make it possible that epithets can be shared, so that you can have somebody else's epithet without taking it away from them, so that Mondays can be special too. Whereas Happy is perfectly fine with being a Monday, but also runs the risk of being complacent in their situation. So if you want to check that out, I'm currently working on it. I've just finished the second draft of the script, and this is exactly what I did the color study and like the character design studies for that I mentioned earlier. So it's probably gonna be a while until that comes out, but since I am doing an Epithet Erased video, I thought I'd mention it since I am working on it currently. Also, Monday No Epithet is not specifically based on either Anime Campaign or Epithet Erased. It takes elements from both. Mostly it is based on Epithet Erased, but it also takes elements like core words and the distinction between Powerhouse Mondays and Expert Mondays, which aren't things that officially belong to canon as of this point in Epithet Erased, but are elements from Anime Campaign that I really wanted to keep in there. Also, I'm gonna have a little bit of my own spin on it, so hopefully I'm gonna strike the right balance of it being similar, but also its own thing. And I actually do feel really confident in it. So if you like this kind of content and you wanna see or hear more of this, I'm gonna talk about a lot of different things, not just shows or movies or video games, but also just in general stuff, anything that I feel I have something to say about, and I have something to say about a lot of things. So if you enjoyed me talking, then please check out my Twitter, where I keep people updated on everything that I do on YouTube and anywhere else. And also, please, if you can and if you want, support me on Patreon. All the links are in the description. And with that being said, thank you for listening, and see you next time. Bye!